Hello, everyone.
Hi, everybody.
Bonjour. When you're coming in, of course, we'd love to see your happy faces. But if you don't mind going ahead and putting yourself on mute, we'd greatly appreciate it. And I want to welcome you all to French Insurance Made Sexy with Fabien Pelissier of Fab Insurance. And we know that this is, maybe not necessarily the sexiest topic on the planet, but we're hoping to have some fun with it nonetheless. And what I'd like to say is that, of course, I'm Adrian Leeds. I've got Fabien Pelissier with us. I also have Patty Sadowskis with us, who's going to be monitoring your questions.
Oh, okay.
And please go ahead and mute yourselves, everybody. And just so you know, since 2015, Fab Insurance has been helping thousands of expats relocate to France each year. And that's one of the reasons that we're working with them. As you know, we really vet the people we work with. So if we're recommending them, then you should be you're good to go. And we're going to let Fabien talk all about this, but let me give you a few housekeeping rules, okay? Basically, we're going to divide this session into 4 sections. First, we're going to talk about health insurance and how that's related to visas. And we're going to spend a few minutes on that. And Fabien's going to talk about it. And then we are going to open that section up for a Q&A so that we're going to just talk about health insurance. Then we're going to move on to homeowner insurance. And we're going to do the same thing. So basically, Fabien will talk about homeowner insurance, and then we'll open it up for a Q&A. Then we're going to talk about car insurance, and we know that not everyone is going to have a car, but some of you will, and that'll be important. So we're going to do the same thing in the same way. And then at the end, we'll have a Q&A, and we'll open up the Q&A so that we can talk about everything. You can ask whatever you want. What I really want to ask you to please do is keep your questions on topic. Don't get too personal. Anything personal, you should really discuss with him on an individual basis. And you can put your questions in the chat, and then Patty will go ahead and call you up. And if you'd like to unmute yourself at that point, ask the question yourself, you're welcome to do that. So if everybody's in and everybody's ready, and if Fabien, you're ready, take it away.
Thank you, Adrian, for the amazing introduction. So thank you all for joining us today. That's really great. I'll also be sharing my screen so that we can follow up on the topics of that insurance, hopefully that will make sexy today. And as Adrian was saying, I mean, we've been working together for a fair bit now. And yeah, I've been in the industry for 10 years. I'm the managing director of Fab French Insurance. We basically are an insurance broker, although usually you hear about us from the initial step, which is the visa application, because very often you need insurance for that to support the application.
Get sound out of this.
But then we also take care of everything else you will or may require down the way. So property insurance, vehicle insurance, and all of the sexy stuff. So I suppose then we can get started. So this is definitely the most burning topic because, well, visa, especially coming from the US, I mean, this is an important topic, usually somewhat of a daunting issue. Well, the French visa process, this is something important to realize. The French visa process is more flexible than the US one in general, meaning that it is a political tool and France can have a softer stance. So what I'll be saying about the requirements is in a way to be taken with a pinch of salt, because although these are the requirements, they may accept things which sometimes doesn't meet the requirements. Also, it's kind of typically French. So the requirements for medical policy to be visa compliant by the book, what makes a policy visa compliant is having in and outpatient benefits, is having, and that's the most important thing that often inflates the premium, unfortunately, there's no deductible, no excess, no copay, no co-insurance, whatever the wording, but they don't want to see any kind of deductible on the policy. So this is something that the French would call a first euro type of policy. Obviously, they need you to have a policy that's valid as a French resident, because, for example, travel insurance usually cannot cover you for like 1 year. It can cover you for up to 90 days in a particular country, but not 1 year. So it needs to be valid as a resident. The policy needs to include repatriation as part of the plan, like in your case, to repatriate you to the US, for example, although you're probably better off staying in France and pay out of pocket anyway. And also you need to have at least 30,000 euros cover, although I would advise 100,000 because it basically doesn't cost much more. And I've seen sometimes, especially in New York or San Francisco, I've seen this a couple of times. It was a couple of years ago, but still, I've seen them being picky with just 30,000 euros. I don't know why. So just to be on the safe side, I advise 100,000, but 30,000 by the book meets the requirements. So these are the requirements. On top of those, they expect to see something where there aren't any kind of medical exclusions. So obviously, may not be achievable for everyone, especially if you've had medical history. It's not necessarily a big deal. Actually, what they expect to see, it's a bit ironic, but it's not that they don't really want to see medical exclusions. They don't want to see exclusions on the certificate of insurance. So as long as you have a policy that doesn't say that some things are excluded on paper, although they may be excluded because there might be a moratorium, which is an automatic exclusion of the claims or something, or of existing conditions, as long as it's not on the certificate of insurance, they'll be happy with it. So this is why I've included this. Is travel insurance accepted? Usually not, but coming from the site, a lot of you guys may use travel insurance and that might be accepted, although this is not technically compliant. So I would not advise this because, and in a way, this is something that I like to say, building a visa application is like, you know, trying to work your credit score. So it's like a residency score. Obviously, if your file is perfect and you've used travel insurance, well, they'll probably let you go through the gates. But if there are things that they don't like in your file, whatever this is, and then you're using travel insurance, then you may end up being rejected. Actually, I've had the case today with 2 Australian people. The file was completely kind of a mess, but could have been accepted. And that actually I've been using travel insurance each, which often is accepted in Australia as well, but this time was not. So they turned to us. And so, so that to say, travel insurance is not technically compatible. And I've seen the question also from Caroline in the chat box. Schengen medical policies, especially if it's emergency, it means it's probably a hospitalization only plan. Usually, it's not supposed to be compliant. Okay, it could be accepted, but it's not supposed to be compliant. There are other small tips that I would share, which again, the goal for you is to maximize the odds. And so for the policy, ideally, not all insurer can do that, but ideally, as you don't want to be paying for something you will not be using, and also you want to maximize the, you want to please the visa agent in a way. So try to get the policy to match your arrival date. Let's say you want to come to France, like the intended arrival date on the visa application is, I don't know, 1st of September 2024. Well, try to get a policy that starts on the 1st of September 2024. And also a policy that says 1 year cover if you're applying for a 1 year visa. Okay, if everything matches, they'll love it. That's something that they like. Something that's often overlooked and it's, I would say, undisclosed. Very often they ask for proof of payment for the policy. So an invoice, whatever, but they want to see the certificate of insurance and the proof of payment for the policy. This is a way that they have, again, should they want to deny the policy, well, the visa, sorry, because of the insurance policy, well, the proof of payment, if the payment seems too low, that they'll know it's a travel insurance plan and they can deny it, because usually they want, you don't provide them with the terms and conditions and stuff like that. So sometimes that's what I'm saying. Travel insurance can definitely get you through the gates. But as they also see the proof of payment and can see the premium, with the premium, they have kind of an idea of what you bought. And so again, most of the time, you may be good to go with non-compliant plans. Again, they're very flexible right now with the US. Since 2021, actually, I've seen a massive improvement in that regard, and that's great. But the general idea is that they want you to match basically what the French healthcare, national healthcare system would provide. And I would say, whatever this is a visa requirement or not, actually, this is what you should aim for, because it kind of makes sense. Because then you can enter the French system very quickly-ish, within the first year. And then you can ditch that private policy and switch to what I would have, and probably Adrian as well, and Patty, the mutual, the top-up health insurance. So that also is only required for the first year, that visa insurance. I don't know, Adrian, is it a good time for a quick Q&A or?
Yes, it is actually, because we're 11 minutes in. That gives you 9 minutes to, for Q&A. So why don't we go ahead and get some questions in here related to the insurance for the visa and health
Okay.
insurance.
Okay, so the Barbara, I don't know, yeah, send us an email. I'll be happy to discuss that. Don't know if well, by the way, the policies we do, we offer guarantee cheap. Like if you find a cheaper plan, we refund the difference. And we also have 100% money back guarantee in terms of, in case of visa rejection. But also, at the end of the day, this is insurance. This is a sexy topic, but whatever the situation, if you don't have a rejection from the consulate, may have changed your mind, sometimes life happens, we understand about that. So then we can also ask for a commercial gesture with the company, but the company may end up denying it. We only refund when it's rejected by the consulate. These are the rules. Mutuals in particular, top-up of insurance, this is a minefield.
I'm laughing because I recently did quite an analysis of several mutuals myself to see if what I had was the best policy or not. So you're right, it is a minefield.
Yeah, it is. There's been a new, I would say, low or kind of, the cards have been reshuffled in a way. In 2020, France and Macron has created something called 100% Santé, and different acronyms and stuff that goes alongside that. But so to keep it simple, basically now you'd have two different types of policies. It's either hospitalization only, which I would not recommend, and technically it is not compliant for residency permits as well. Although again, as an American, they may let you get it anyway, but I would not advise this. So you're supposed to have the second category, which is called a mutuelle responsable. And what makes a mutuelle responsable? It's basically everything should be covered 100%. And I won't get into too much details, but basically the French government has defined something I like to refer as an index. It's basically what they think something should be worth. But again, like France is very cheap. Like a consultation with a GP is 25 euros. I don't know if you have to get a heart, you go to a heart doctor consultation, it's going to be 50 to 80 euros. If you have to go through an ECG, it's going to cost 100-ish euros, and the list goes on. Like a scan, it's going to be less than 100 euros. An X-ray, so just so that you have an idea as well of the costs in France. And this is without insurance. So the state has defined an index, and obviously, as this is France, I would have been too simple should the state have refunded their own index. So they refund a part of their own index. So the mutual is actually topping up this index, but the index may not be what you had at paying. If you go private, obviously they'll charge more. So they may charge 2 times, 3 times the index. So that's why you would see these policies with 100% or 200%, etc. It's actually a percentage of the index. So it all looks confusing. You'll see living in France, it's actually very simple. That's why usually you don't bother, especially coming from the US. You go with a 100% plan, means everything will be topped up to the index. And the index has one massive perk. Whatever you're doing, every medical professional, even if it's a private, top-notch private dentist, best in France, it's mandatory, like by law, they all have to provide you with a quote that's 100% santé compatible, as we call it, which means you would be provided always with one quote for free, so which would be covered 100% between the mutual and the state. Sure, that might be the metal-based crown, or that's probably not going to be the Gucci frames for the glasses and stuff like that, especially in France. I mean, Gucci is not French, so we might prefer Dior anyway. But yeah, so then you can top that up out of pocket. But the idea is that you have an option for free. Obviously, you probably prefer to get the ceramic-based dentistry and things like that. But again, the idea is that you'll have an option for free.
Fabien, I think I'm going to blow everybody's mind because I see in the chat that people are kind of wanting to know about what this costs, a mutuelle, right? Once you've gone the French healthcare system and then how much the mutuelle is. So I ended up with the best policy on the market, which has 100% coverage with no deductible. I am 71 years old and it costs me 1,800 euros a year. So I have a feeling everyone's going to go, whoa. I often hear that's how much it costs a month for me.
Yeah, that's it. On average, someone, late 50s, early 60s is going to be around 60-ish, euros a month. That's pretty much what you end up paying. And as Adrian was saying, it's exactly that. No deductible. I mean, all policies in France, they don't have any copay, no deductible, nothing. And also very, very important, in a way, the state dictates, but in a good way, what should be refunded. So there's no medical questionnaire, no exclusions. You can have stage 4 cancer and go straight away for a cancer treatment. Everything will be refunded. So if the state refunds it, then the mutual will top it up. And yeah, so this is a very good system. I love it. I'm a bit biased.
The other comment I'd like to make is last year I had my assistant analyze how much money I had saved by virtue of being on the French healthcare system, which turned out to be almost the exact amount of money that it cost me to have the mutual policy. So I kind of saw it as, well, that was a wash, like, right? Big deal.
Yeah. No, that's it. So yeah, you're right. I was reading through the questions and the average premium, again, that's why as a couple is going to be less than 150. Well, retirees, early retirees, let's say again, late 50s, early 60s, it's going to be less than 150 a month, definitely. I mean, much more, like probably closer to actually 100 rather than 150. So obviously it depends the kind of policy, but I mean, I would always advise, again, especially from the US, you just go for the 100% policy. It doesn't make much of a difference anyway. And then in case you want the fancy stuff, you just pay out of pocket for the difference. And again, remember, should you not want to pay out of pocket, you will have a free option anyway with the 100% policy. So the only thing where I would not advise to stick with the bare 100% is for hospitalization. And not necessarily for the extra bit, but mostly because when this is a bit buffed up, they'll include the cover for a single room, like an hotel, actually. They'll cover, for example, up to 50 euros a day, 100 euros a day. So especially when you're living in, I would say expensive places in France, like Paris, Southeast, where hospitals might charge what you probably would have actually in a clinic, like a private hospital, and they usually charge a bit more, then you probably don't want to end up paying like 150, 200 a day just for the single room. It's better if you at least have a part of this that's covered by the mutual, but like buffing up the hospital bit usually isn't that expensive anyway. So I would suggest to get 100%, and just for that usually is enough. And just if you can have something slightly better for hospitalization, but even if you don't get that, that'll be okay. So in terms of names, there are so many different providers in France. It's difficult to kind of throw out some names or pinpoint some names. It's actually funny because I would actually refer to the quality of service. So for now, there are two plans that I like dealing with at the minute. Again, it changes every year, but at the minute, for example, when we're aiming for the highest possible quality of service, there's actually a Swiss company, Swiss Life. They're not that expensive. They're not the cheapest though, but they have like top-notch quality of service. That's the one we have in-house, so that I have. So it's good. It's not the cheapest, but that's some policy I like. Also, there is a provider. Well, level of service is a bit lower, but they do have policies and a customer service that can manage 100% of the claims and everything in English, and that's April. That they have a dedicated policy for English-speaking expats in France. So that's great for the English-speaking bit, obviously, especially when you just arrived and your level of French might be limited. So that's great. You can then, take all the time you like with this one. Yeah, these are the two for different reasons, but these are the two that we like. And obviously the big brand as well. You'd have the AXA and, well, some of the insurance companies.
You work with Altis?
Altis is a very, very good. Yeah, very good.
That's the plan that I have.
Yeah. Altis is top-notch quality of customer service as well. And they're also a bit, actually, it's funny because they're underwritten by Swiss Life. That's why I was mentioning. So it's the same. It's the same quality of service. It's the same types of policy. It's just that I'd prefer to go directly with Swiss Life when available, just because, it's less one intermediary. But I mean, it's kind of the same type of policy.
We're actually out of time on health insurance because we want to move on to homeowner insurance. Okay, but I have one small comment to make just to keep people so they understand what we're dealing with. I had a small procedure done in a clinic, and when I registered, they asked me if I wanted a private room instead of a shared room. And I said, well, how much does it cost to have a private room? And they said 40 euros. And I just started to laugh because that's I said, well, I think I'll take the private room. It was just so silly.
Yeah, a cleaning, for example, cleaning is 50 euros on average. Same. Everything is so cheap.
This was in a medical clinic, right? But
yeah.
Okay, so basically, we're going to move on to homeowner, but for anybody who needs healthcare insurance, basically you just contact Fabien and he'll explain it all to you.
Yeah, I'll share my email at the end of this presentation. So all the questions that I might not have addressed or answered, feel free to shoot them in the through email, and I'll be happy to answer them as well.
And you'll have them from the chat as well.
Okay, so I'll do my best. Okay, great.
Okay, so next slide, right?
Yep. So okay, so we talked about that. Yeah. Okay, so that's a great topic. It is probably going to be, obviously it's similar and different at the same time. It's something we like to talk about, Adrian and I. Like French and US law are very different. The logic is completely reversed. So obviously the way you'll deal with this, for example, accidental damages, like your hyphen drops, it's never going to be covered in France. Whatever you do, and when I say you, it might be like if you're with kids or family that's considered as yourself, it's your surroundings. If they damage your belongings, it's considered accidental damages, and you cannot claim against that on property insurance in France. Unless this is like a distant relative, like a cousin, might usually works, but also need to have public liability in France. Otherwise, the insurance company has no one to turn against. And so this is kind of the logic in France. So that bit, for example, that does not, is important to realize, like there aren't that many things. But on the other hand, there are things that you can claim against, which are in a way, the way it's assessed is independently managed in France. And so if the claim is legit, well, sure, delays may not be top notch all the time, but basically, if you're entitled to that claim, it will happen in France. You will get the money. You will be able to make a claim. For example, you have a leak, a leak on the roof. There's been a storm, then you have a leak, and then there's water damage in the apartment, for example. Well, everything will be covered. Everything will be covered. If the place is not habitable, they'll cover for a temporary accommodation and stuff like that. So, yeah. So, but just back to the basic question, well, homeowner insurance, is it mandatory? So, technically speaking, the only thing that's mandatory is so it depends if you're a property owner or a tenant, but let's say if you're a property owner, you just need to have public liability. In theory, this is a theory. As a renter, you also just need to have, well, as a renter, this is different. But as a property owner, the only thing that's mandatory is public liability. However, should you try to get a public liability only policy in France for a property, that's basically not doable. It's kind of always home and contents insurance. Unless you're a property owner and you're letting out the building permanently or seasonally, then you'll have property owner policy, like a renter's policy. You would just insure the walls. And also on that topic, France does not consider the value of the walls, unless this is a castle or something like this. But usually on average policies, unless the property is worth, and actually, even if it's worth like more than 1 million, but when it's a classified property or when this is a castle or a manoir or something like that's classified or could be categorized as such, unless this is something like that, it's always up to the risk reconstruction value. So you don't declare the value of your property. You declare the value of your belongings that you want to insure. And by the way, it's also okay. And you may have like 100,000 euros worth of belongings and declare only 10 if you like. You decide. But this is not a value you've agreed. Like it's not an agreed valuation. Like if you only have 10,000 valuables at home and you declare 100,000, they will not pay for 100,000 in case of a burglary. You'll have to also be able to back up your claims. But
what is the minimum policy, homeowner policy? I think it's like 8,000 or something, right?
Homeowner in
the minimum coverage.
Oh no, actually. Oh yeah, you mean in terms of value, the content
Right,
that's
the
covered?
minimum value you can insure.
Well, there isn't really a minimum. I mean, it could even be lower than that. I mean, technically, it really depends on the insurance company. But this is so cheap. The content is actually not the more, well, depends on the company again. But it usually, I mean, we have partners we can work with that could go as low as 1,000.
Okay, because just to understand, when you own a property in an apartment building, the building insures the building. So you as the homeowner only have to insure your contents in effect, correct?
Yeah. Yes and no. So yes, you insure the content, but kind of an extended version though. You kind of insure, I would say, your bit of the walls.
Right,
Like
right.
your public liability towards the building, should you damage the building in what, but some bits of the building are yours, like the door, for example, doors, like the sink, like obviously the pipes, even the pipes and the wires, electric wiring and stuff in the walls, they're usually yours to insure.
Right, but if the roof leaks, that's the building.
Yeah, but yeah, exactly. But that's why everyone needs to be insured. So basically, let's say you're a tenant within an apartment that's within a building. So the tenant has to be insured. The landlord, the property owner, has to be insured, and the building, as Adrian was saying, the building is insured. And let's say if the roof is leaking, then actually you as a tenant, and obviously it creates some damages in your flat, then you will claim against that. And then your insurance policy will claim against the landlords and the landlords against the building. And that's the chain of events. But you would not really see that happening. That would work behind the curtains. You will just claim on your policy and be refunded eventually, although that's probably the building that will handle the pain. because they are the source of the problem.
Isn't there an agreement between the insurance companies to cover, like your personal insurance to cover up to a certain level so they don't have to get reimbursed by the insurance of the fault of the other party? You understand
No,
my
but
question?
yeah, well, not directly, but there is an agree. Yes, yes. Well, depends on the angle, but for that question, depends on how you see the question. There is an agreement if it's less than 6,000 euros.
Okay,
Indeed,
yes.
they fast track the process and they process it directly within, well,
With your own insurance rather than
Yeah.
with the, right.
But
right.
I prefer to see
Perpetrator's
that. So you're
insurance.
right. Technically, you're right. But I prefer to see that as kind of a fast track for actually the ones making the claim. When he sees a small claim, they fast track the process. So
Yes,
that
but it's very intelligent, and I don't believe that that happens in the US. I'm not,
yeah.
yeah, I'm not sure. I
It-
don't think so, but it
Um,
makes it much faster and easier.
Yeah, well, that actually makes any. Well, it's also important to understand, especially in the insurance industry in France, most things have been created to actually protect the client, the insuree. This is why when you hire, for example, that's very important. When you hire a builder, they have to have 10 years insurance. This is mandatory in France. Even a painter have to have 10 years insurance so that the policy, the home insurance policy can always know if this is for them to pay for, let's say, the building's insurance, or maybe if, I don't know, you've had air conditioning installed in your building, you did that, and you paid for someone to do it, they're supposed to have 10 years insurance. So if in 5-6 years time, there's a problem with air conditioning, the builder is supposed to pay. But if it doesn't, or if you went out of business, then you can claim on this 10 years insurance, which will remain valid for 10 years. So as long as you have kept a copy of the original invoice, you can always claim, even if the guy went out of business. And that's very good because in a way, they're protecting you no matter what happens. I mean, this is the general idea. Obviously, it always flows in the system, but it's made to protect clients. Yeah.
We should go ahead. Have you done your piece? Because we should try to open, we got another 5 minutes on this topic and maybe we should open it up for Q&A.
Yeah, I'm saying is flood
ready with
insurance a
that?
separate thing. No, actually, it's good because all French policies are comprehensive. Even the assistance, same with car insurance, roadside assistance, that kind of stuff. It's always packaged. It's like all inclusive, you could say. But so you'd have fire, floods, theft, everything is included. The only thing that may not be included sometimes might be vandalism, depending on the property you're insuring, the type of insurance, which is a particular kind of theft, where the thieves would basically have vandalized your property. And that's not something you can buy on the side, but this kind of top-up insurance, like flood insurance and that stuff that you would have in the US, that doesn't exist in France. It's all inclusive. So you may remove some options on the contract in France, but you cannot buy that separately. So it's always all inclusive. And also, France does make a very important point of that thing of acts of gods, natural disasters and that kind of stuff. If this is always included, so if there is, I don't know, hailstorm and you've had a problem, like again, leak in the roof or whatever, it's even better because not only the state will dictate, well, it's usually like the city hall or something like that, but basically they say the state will dictate whatever your insurance policy should refund you or not. So then the insurer doesn't have a choice. The state will decide, the state of natural disaster, but also they'll enforce what the deductible should be for that kind of claim. So again, France is heavily invested and monitors the industry much closer outside than in the US. Yeah.
Wow, well, that keeps the premiums down.
Yeah, premium wise, I mean,
so what's an average homeowner premium? Because when we see it with our clients, we see that they end up spending about 350 or 400 euros a year for a standard insurance, homeowner insurance policy.
Yeah, seems about right. I mean, it obviously depends on how big the property is. It's not the same for a castle.
And how much you're insuring, how much your contents are.
But it's very important. Well, this one makes sense. It also depends where, obviously, you are. doesn't cost the same if you are in the middle of rural France or obviously near to the Champs-Élysées in Paris. It's not the same kind of risk. It's not the same population.
Right.
It's not the same price tag for repairs. So obviously all of that influences. But you're right. I mean, yeah, you're right, Adrian. I mean, well, let's say very broad range, but between 250 to 500, you'd
Right.
have more than 80% of all the policies that are out there.
Well, that's another thing I think everyone's going to be really shocked about. The price
And that
of
would be for,
insurance is
yeah.
just really low.
No, that, yeah. Yeah, and another question, like if a large claim, how long does it usually takes to settle? That at the minute, so actually it really depends, because when there is a large claim, that they'll dispatch an assessor, an independent assessor, then the assessor will have to file a report to the company, sign, well, and you also will have to usually ask builders to run some quotations for you, and then the assessor basically will confirm that these quotation you provided are relevant or not. So it could be fairly quick. What I'm saying, it boils down to how fast the assessor will do its job, and you how fast you will be able to provide them with quotations. But let's say if you are responsive, that could be settled within a couple months for large claims. However, I won't lie, it depends on where you are in France, because there is a shortage of assessors in some areas of France. And because of that, but basically, if the assessor is not responding, well, you just have to wait for the guy.
Well,
And
we have,
sometimes, obviously, you may also require an English-speaking assessor, because some companies will allow that. But obviously, they have less English-speaker assessors. So all of that may add to the delay. So it may take more than 6 months. It really depends.
we have
Also
learned to have patience.
yeah, but something very important as well. As long as it's been properly documented, it's okay to do the work and keep everything documented, and then you may be refunded later. Okay, this is
So you
something
can
you
go
do.
ahead and do the repairs, and then you put your own money out front, and then you get reimbursed.
Yeah, that's obviously some people may be reluctant to do that because it's kind of a risk. You're like, oh, I'm not sure. But as long as the builders have properly documented everything, it's properly quoted,
Right.
you took some picture or videos, and you have documented the claim. This, I mean, I've never seen a massive issue again when it's properly documented. Most of the issues we're seeing, it's, well, the delays because of the assessor. That's very often the main issue. Again, it's not catastrophic, but this is the main issue I could envision. The other issue is just with the documentation. I mean, you may have, I don't know, 30,000 euros worth of content, but you don't only have like 5,000 euros worth of invoices to prove or back up your claim.
Right.
France will tolerate, I mean, they're very generous in a way, because even if you don't have any kind of supportive documents, they'll still give you something. But obviously, then there will be much more discounted than compared
Right.
to what if you had the formal evidence of your belongings.
Okay, how about moving on to car insurance?
Yeah, that's your favorite topic, Adrian, isn't it?
No.
I know. I know. So, from the US, this is definitely, I mean, most people I'm talking with from the US or Canada for that, they usually overlook this. If they consider driving in France, they think it won't be a problem, and often ends up being a very big problem. So, what's the reason for that? First, the state you're from. Well, most importantly, the driver license state you currently have. Not all states are created equal, I would say, in regard to French driving licenses. So it's a bit peculiar because France has different agreements. So if you're from Florida, for example, good news, the driver license is exchangeable for a French license. If you're from California, bad news, it is not. So in theory, if you want to drive in France, you'll have to get through the test again. So, well, there are some ways, like if you have friends or family in a state which does have agreements with France, then, well, you can move to that state before you actually move to France to exchange your license and get an exchangeable license. But basically, this is a bit of a mess. So that's the first topic that's very, very often overlooked. People realize this, once they are in France. If you're still in the US considering a move, you might consider changing state or address to get a new license in the state before you move to France and get an exchangeable license. If you've moved, that's too late. That's too late. So if you come from a
we
site,
talk about this all the time. I have lots of clients who have been able to kind of, you know, find an address, a friend or a relative, so that they can go to another state and get a new driver's license so they can make the exchange.
but yeah. Well, this is clever, and it's not really a trick, you know, especially if you're moving to France eventually. So it's just that if you've anticipated on that, you have the option. Otherwise, well, you're in France, so you're flipping a coin. Does my state have an agreement with France? And if not, well, then the only option is to get through the test again. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is, well, actually, I should say discounts. The discount system with insurance policies definitely doesn't work the same. So not all French insurers will treat you the same. So first, many French insurers will not be happy having you insuring you with a US license, even if you have an international license. Obviously, we do that all day. We have solutions, no problem. But I'm saying that for some insurers, that will be an issue. So that's the first thing. The second thing is the insurance discount. Most of the time, you probably can get a nice little discount in France. But it's just a matter of, obviously, if you're dealing with an insurance company that's not used to be dealing with Americans, they don't know what you look at. And obviously, if you don't tell them, they won't ask you if they don't know. So, for example, we would usually ask you to get a driver records from the states you're from. And if you've been in various states for the past, I don't know, 10 years, then we'll ask for, you just call these states and get the driver records from all of these states. This is by far the easiest way to go, because then we'll get all of your, we don't mind about the parking tickets and stuff like this, but we'll see the insurance claims you've made. And basically, if none, well, we can get you the maximum discount in France, which is 50%, which is actually nice. Or we can ask your current insurance company to write a formal letter of no claims and, you know, all the claims you've filed for the past years and, you know, the history you've had. But not all US insurers will be happy. Well, sometimes you're dealing with robots. So, you know, it may not be convenient for you to get a letter from your insurance company, because this is not standard in the US. So obviously, depends on who you're dealing with. But as it's not standard in the US, not all can do that easily, at least. That's why going for the record, you know, the driver record from the site, from my perspective, is the most simple way. But again, you can also ask your insurance company if it's an option that works as well. If you're dealing with a broker in the US, that's actually the easiest, because the broker will usually be more than happy to write a letter himself, so that you'll have it, you'll have something convenient for us to use.
Patty
Also,
put a link in the chat, by the way, just so that you can, so our audience can go there and see which states have the reciprocal driving license.
yeah, right.
Okay.
And you have to actually type the name in the page is in English, but you have to type États-Unis. That's the name of your country. And actually, as there is an accent on the E, so just type uni, like UNI.
Yes, yeah.
That's the way. Otherwise, you won't find it in the list.
It
But
won't
basically,
find it,
États-Unis,
yeah.
and then you select your state. Yeah.
So I have a trick for people, okay, that when they want to come and they want to exchange their license, they need to tell their DMV that they lost their license so that they'll get a second copy of it. That way, when they turn in their US license to France, they'll still have a copy of their US license when they're traveling in the States.
For ID, it's useful. Yeah, because actually that's very different as well. You used to be using your driver license as a piece of ID. Actually, in France, we would have something that looks similar. That's actually an ID card. It's not the driver license, although the driver license works as well. Or we would use our passports. But it's actually very rare that we do use the driver license as a piece of ID in France. Well, just for the fun fact. No, car insurance usually is much actually less expensive.
What is the average? What is the average driving?
Well, same. It depends on. It's not the same for Lada or a Porsche, but for an average
I
type of
bet.
vehicle, well, actually, even a Porsche. Well, that's a very good example. Actually, even a Porsche, considering you can convert your discount into a French one. So on average, especially for retirees, early retirees, you'd probably be eligible for maximum discount in France. And there are tricks to make sure you can maximize this as well. But on average, I mean, I'll say it differently. The average vehicle, so, well, it's like, Ford Focus, or that kind of range of vehicle, like
Right, average rate.
middle range, middle price, you're going to be probably around 400 euros plus or minus 100 euros a year, depending on
A year?
exactly. Yeah, a year. But that might be twice as that, again, depending on the discount. I mean, discount plays a massive part. And also, depending on where you are in France. If you're in Paris, that's going to be much more expensive, because
Right.
Paris, we have lots of small claims that goes with living in a big city.
My sister's car insurance in Louisiana, okay, on a Lexus was $350 a month.
Oof, I know.
Okay,
Well,
not
that
a
would be for a
year.
young driver's insurance in France. That's the price for young drivers, and even for young drivers, that might be a bit cheaper. Yeah.
No, but I think that across the board, insurance is probably maybe like for health is 1/10 the cost. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, no, it's much cheaper, and very important. The way it works is also very French specific. France does not actually insure the person; they insure the vehicle. So that means that, as well, technically you could be signed. So you're the policy holder. You're not really the insured person. You're a beneficiary of your own policy. The car is insured, and everyone who drives the car is therefore insured with the same benefits as if you were driving it. The only difference when that's not you behind the wheel is that the deductible might increase. On average, it's almost always the same rate. If it's not you, they just had 150 euros on top of the deductible, which depends on how valuable your car is, but the deductible can be 300 to 600 is the average deductible in France on a car insurance policy. And then just top that up 150 more if that's not you behind the wheel. If it's a young driver, though, the deductible skyrockets, like they had like something like 1,500 or something like that. But in case of a claim, your discount takes the hit, even if that's not you, because they don't mind whoever's driving. They're insuring the vehicle, and that discount is tied to the vehicle.
You mean the deductible?
No, well, the deductible is it changes when that's not you, but the deductible depends on, it's a commercial term of the policy. You negotiate that. Well, you decide to go with this, like a higher or lower deductible. Obviously, the higher the deductible, the lower the premium, and vice versa.
Right. Okay.
So, but that's something very important. You always are covered. There's no need to call the insurance company to say, "Oh, I'll be having my sister-in-law and she'll be driving the vehicle for a month." Yeah.
Oh,
no
right.
problem.
Whoever's driving is covered.
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing.
But in case of a claim, you take the hit. So
yeah. Okay.
you have to be you have to be friend with whoever you're lending your vehicle to.
So we have 12 minutes left, and I think it would be a good idea just to open up the Q&A for any topic at this point.
Yeah.
So, Patty, you see any particular
Good, yeah.
questions in here?
Oh, let me look. Well, there actually, Fabien, there's one unrelated question, and it's regarding pet insurance. And I think that might be interesting to cover really quickly.
Yeah, very good, very good. I'm a terrible sales agent. I don't like to be selling stuff that's not relevant. France vets are so cheap as well. The pet insurance industry is not as big in France. It's kind of a niche market. And therefore, niche market means lack of competition, means premium high test. they're kind of expensive. And therefore, again, considering that vets are very cheap, I would rather suggest you don't get insured and you just pay out of pocket and you'd end up saving quite a lot of money. However, obviously, if you want to consider this because you prefer to have a flat rate every month and just buy peace of mind, this is completely doable. They have very weird behaviors, most insurers, because when the cat or dog becomes too old, some companies will actually, if you make too many claims, they'll cancel the policy and things like that. This is terrible. So the only company that I would endorse, I'm not working with them directly, by the way, but it's made by vets, and so doesn't come with any perky exclusions like the one I mentioned, would be a one called Bulle Bleu, like blue bubble, literally, which sounds a bit weird in English, but that's the name of the. But again, I would rather suggest basically pay out of pockets and don't get insurance for pets. It's probably going to be, unless pets, I mean, cats and dogs, actually, sorry. If we're talking about, for example, a horse, that's different. But cats and dogs, no.
Well, I don't think we were thinking of horses as pets, but.
No.
Yeah, me neither. But that's why I just thought about it. I thought it would be relevant.
It's true. It's true. Yeah. So David Marcus has had his hand up. David, do you want to unmute and ask your question?
I do. Thank you. First off,
Thank you, David.
these sessions are wonderful, so I appreciate the sharing of the wisdom. So my question is really specific to healthcare, and you may have touched on this, or maybe it's not the right time for this conversation, but one of the greatest concerns in healthcare coverage, besides unexpected hospitalization, is the cost for prescription medication, at least in the United States. As you know, it's out of control. I guess the question is, with regards to these policies, do they offer any type of coverage? I mean, what do people do coming over that have certain drugs, and how does that work within the French system, or is that a totally separate conversation?
No, well, no, it's actually a very, very relevant question, because ongoing medication and prescriptions. So
are covered.
Once you're part of the French system, obviously there is a gap period, but I'll talk about this. But once you're part of the French system, so once you're into the French social security, that would be 100% covered, and the mutual will top it up. Even if that was existing, again, there is no such thing as medical questionnaires when you get to the stage of the mutual. So, and usually when it's a rule of thumb, you might find exclusions, but exceptions, but usually when something is prescribed by a GP in France, it will be 100% refunded at the pharmacy between French Social Security, which, by the way, we call CPAM, CPAM, between CPAM and the mutual. That would cover it up. But for the gap period, when you're not yet part of the French system, which, by the way, you can apply to get into the French system after 90 days, and it really depends on how busy they are, but on average, I would say 6 to 7 months to get into the French system. So let's say roughly within a year, you're usually into the system. But so for that first year's cover, when you have to go private, well, there are always ways to get existing conditions covered, but the premium would just skyrocket. And they're not up to speed, all these insurers, including ours, the ones we're working with. That's why I would always suggest go with the automatic exclusions or exclusions to keep the premium as low as possible. Insulin in France, I think a month worth of insulin is something like 120 euros. Okay, so it's completely different world. You can even.
I find that the drugs are so cheap, it's a joke. Okay.
I know.
I mean, first of all, if you have to pay out of pocket, it's 1/10 of what the cost is. It's almost always covered. Okay. I'm on HRT, hormone replacement therapy, and if I have to pay out of pocket, it's €4 for a month.
Yeah, that's the kind of expense. That's it.
It's a joke. Okay. We have had clients who have moved over here who are HIV positive because their drugs are 100% paid for.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's
if you have a long-term affection, it's very good. Yeah, very good too. Actually, if you have a long-term affection, once you're part of the French system, whatever, cancer, you've had heart issues, whatever.
100%.
Yeah, that's it. Then you'll qualify for something called ALD in France. You'll have to ask for it, but basically know that it exists. Your GP will remind you of this anyway, and everything will be covered 100%. Another joke. It's a fun fact. This one. Every claim you're making, what I'm saying, it's 100% for free. It is not. Very often, the state applies a small deductible to avoid abuse, and that's a €1 deductible. So that's why
Right.
I say it's for free. But recently, they've changed this, like beginning of the year, in January, they voted to change to get the deductible from €1 to €2. So you see, still not, but it made the headlines, and they were actually protesting in the streets. They're doubling the deductible.
Right, and it went from €1 to €2, and okay.
Yeah, but that was a big deal for some. So you're like, so it says a lot about the French mindset in regard to healthcare. That's what I'm saying. Basically, once you're part of the system, everything's covered. You just know, you don't have to understand the system. You know, most of the people, my friends, and even when they're in the 40s, 50s, they don't understand the French system. They just know that when they walk into the pharmacy, they won't pay anything. When they go to the hospital, they won't pay anything. Or if they have something to pay, it's almost always going to be less than €50. So like €50 would be considered a massive out-of-pocket expense in France.
Oh my God, yes, that would, and they apologized when they told
Yes.
me €4, and I laughed. They apologized to me for
They do. They do. It's fine.
I just thought, okay, this is nuts. I see one question in here that's actually for me. It says, "Do you rely on Medicare when I'm back in the US?"
Okay.
And please mute yourselves, you guys. And it's my understanding that travel insurance does not cover US citizens in the US, and she'd be afraid to come back without insurance. Okay. Basically, I don't have Medicare because I don't live in the United States, and there's no reason for me to have Medicare. But also, when I do travel to the US, my French policy would cover emergency situations in the US, but only at the French scheduled rates. So I take out travel insurance. I just
in
do
France,
travel
yeah.
insurance. No,
And
we're
there-
travel insurance for the US.
And there
Yeah,
are
policy
policies
that
that
covers
will
you.
cover you in the US.
That's it. Yeah. Yeah. But you need to actually, this is a very clever way to do it. Once you're part of the French system, you get travel insurance in France. You need to be part of the French system, though, in the first place, because France will cover you abroad, including the US. And then even if the refund from France, so from French CPAM, is low or non-existent, they'll top it up to whatever the policy covers then. Yeah.
Right. Let's see, we have 2 minutes left. So
even someone was asking, Andrea, even expensive cancer drugs. It's actually, you mean, even if you have the name of your medicine, you can type the name of your drug. It's probably going to be the same name in French anyway. And space Amélie, AMELI.fr. You type this, and obviously cost. And you type this, or the same, the name of your drug, CPAM cost. You will find the value of the index. So it's basically what it's supposed to be worth in France. So you can find how much it is in France and do the math on your own. But as Adrian was saying, this is something I do almost on a daily basis, advising people from the US who have medical conditions. They're talking me or telling me about their drugs they're under, they're with. Most of the time, we knock off a zero. That's,
yeah, it's 1/10.
Yeah, 1/10.
Almost across the board. Right.
1/10.
Right. I mean, I personally cannot say enough good things about the French healthcare system, for one thing, and about the low cost of insurance on every level.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. And again, usually things works well because also, well, we're talking about people, but most of the time, the French have also a very friendly stance towards American expats. Well, the only grudge that we may have would be with the Brits, potentially, but not with Americans. And actually, the French usually love Americans. So, and you may feel that. I'm sure Adrian and Patty, you feel it on a daily basis, don't you?
What, the
Like the
French?
French, usually like Americans.
Oh,
like-
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no. I've never felt any, what, I don't, any, what's the word? Adversity? No.
But I
No.
mean, so you can feel this even what I'm saying is what I'm implying basically is even with the GP, you know, within the medical system, because sometimes, well, you're talking about technical things like health, you know, conditions. So even if your French is not perfect, so first, especially if you're living in a big city, you probably can find English speaking GPs and doctors, and then
sure,
everything's settled.
sure. You
But
speak
everyone
English.
will be helpful, even if you have to go through in a lab that doesn't really speak English and stuff. Usually they're very helpful. Again, well, you may end up with someone that's a jerk, but usually they're quite friendly and helpful. Yeah.
We are out of time, so maybe you wanna wrap this up?
Yeah, well, on the final slide that's been on forever now. So you have my details. You can send us or me an email on hello@fabfrenchinsurance.com. An address or an answered question. I'm more than happy to go into more details. And obviously, as you were saying, Adrian, I'll try to review these the questions that's been sent into the chat box. And if you've left your details, I'll try to answer each and every one of you individually as well. Just bear with me. Couple bank
We
holidays.
have the registration
May.
list, so you'll have their emails,
Yeah,
Brilliant.
right?
exactly.
Well, and
exactly.
I'd certainly like to thank Fabien for being here and for giving us all this fabulous information and making insurance as sexy as possible.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't come with a rugby player on the background, but I would have been a bit sexier.
And I'd like to thank everybody for being here and hope this was helpful. And this has been recorded. That's one thing I didn't mention in the beginning. So I will post it on our YouTube channel and you'll be able to watch it or send it on to your friends as well. So you'll be hearing from me about this in an upcoming newsletter. So thanks to everyone.
Thank you. Thank you,
Fabien.
everyone.
Thank
Thank you
you,
for
Very
having me.
good.
Goodbye,
Thank you,
everyone.
Brittany.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
À bientôt. Au revoir.
À bientôt.
Thank you.